Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
So in today's episode we're taking a look at the pretty little kitties here, cute little kitties with Race to the Raft. This is a spin-off sequel to Isle of Cats from City of Games. So my thoughts on Isle of Cats, I think you already probably know these by now. I really like the game is really good. But I have since sold it from my collection mainly because of Explore and Draw, which I have on my shelf over there, which I feel gives me pretty much the same feeling as Isle of Cats did, but in a fraction of the playing time and size box and everything. You know, Isle of Cats is still a great game, but I only wanted one of them in my collection. I decided that a tiny box on my shelf was easier to store and play than this giant monstrosity. So that's the only reason, but Isle of Cats is a sweet polyomino game. This one is of a similar ilk. It's using the same artwork and style as Isle of Cats did, but this is a very different game. The two are not alike in any way. This is a full cooperative game that can also be played solo, and the solo mode is slightly different to the multiplayer, but for the most part exactly the same. The idea is that you are trying to save cats from a burning island. So you set up a scenario, of which there's quite a few in the rulebook. And these scenarios dictate like a bunch of coloured squares, some of which have got burnings, you know, little patterns like that. And you will set the board up in such a way based on the scenario. So, you know, you might have several of these boards together with fire in certain places, usually around the edge. And you might have to put on extra cards based on what the scenario is. But the idea is that you have these cats. These cats are of the different breeds, much like what you saw in Isle of Cats. And these will be, let's take that out, that doesn't quite work. There we go, let's have something like that. The idea being is that the cats will have starting positions based on the scenario, and they will have a raft which they have to reach in order to get free. So let's see if I can find a raft, for example. Here we go, little raft card here. So let's say the raft is there and the cats start about here. The idea is that the cats have limited movement on this board. So each of you will have a bunch of these cards available, which basically if you've played anything like Honshu, Hokkaido, Walking in Province, you know, games like that, they're basically these square cards that have the grid patterns on them in different combinations. The idea is that you will draw from 4 different decks, of which the decks correspond to the frequency of how certain colours will appear. But what you'll do is that you either place a card on the grid in order to basically change the landscape, or you will discard a card out of the game in order to move a cat as far as it can through its own colour pattern on the board. Green through green, red through red, blue through blue, etc. And there are some variants where you can have like harder difficulties and such, but that's kind of like the gist of the basic game. Every time that you discard 4 or more cards at a time, or every time that you actually place a card on the board, you have to then draw out of this giant bag of fire polyomino pieces, of which there's quite a lot of big chunky ones in here. And you have to place them on this board so that they connect to previous fire, allowing it to spread. Obviously, you're trying to place them as efficiently as possible so that you don't spread the fire too wildly and block off the access of the cats to the raft.
The prophecy will help.
The whole thing takes place as one big co-op, so there's no turn order. You decide between yourselves who should play a card next, you communicate with each other, but then once somebody is playing a card, communication must cease and that player has to do everything themselves. However, there are some ways that you can get past that communication front, although that's a good and a bad thing, we'll get to that. But that's kind of the gist. It's basically a puzzle. Now, I said you can play this solo, and I think it's probably my personal favourite way to play, but that's from me as a gamer perspective. One thing about Race to the Raft is that it really does depend on the type of setting that you're in. I don't think this is a game that gamers are going to go mad for. It's quite simplistic in its rule set, it's quite simplistic in its puzzle, even though it is still quite, you know, thinky. You know, you have to make good decisions, you can't just autopilot it, especially when you get to the harder difficulties. But it's definitely got a more sort of family-friendly feel, this one. And I think it's going to be more for new people to games and certainly for families with younger kids. And here's one particular reason why. The communication front. There's some variant rules where you throw in things like tokens that you can exchange and, you know, make the game easier or harder. But the main thing that you will add once you get through a couple of tutorial scenarios are these communication tokens. There's 2 types, a human and a cat, although the human's got whiskers as well. So cat woman, I don't know, but yeah, furry, I don't know, something like that. But the idea is that with these tokens, when somebody normally has to take a go and you have to cease communication, if you discard the human ones, you and that person can discuss whatever you need to do about where they place their card. This one, on the other hand, the cat one, the rulebook says that you have to meow like a cat.
Right.
Oh boy. I am not a fan of these mechanics where the game basically says, act stupid because we need laughter or fun. This is one of those occasions that doesn't need to be in this game. I mean, I just treat these talking tokens as if they're the same. You discard one and you can communicate. I've got no intention of sitting at a table in the middle of a game cafe meowing all the time to try and indicate to somebody that they should place a card somewhere or not. I mean, it's just... From someone like me, it's puerile and stupid, but I get that families with young children would get a kick out of this. You know, the kids could be given the cat ones, and they'd have fun doing the meowing thing. And so this is where I get back to the whole idea that this is definitely for a target audience, and I'm probably not that target audience. Although, when you play this solo, it is still a cool, thinky puzzle, and, you know, the different scenarios will get harder, the maps will get bigger, there's more cats, there's duplicates of the colour cat, so I've got to really concentrate on red, but then how do I get the yellow out if I'm focusing so much on red? And with the solo, you basically just have a bunch of cards, you play one, and you draw again, and you'll eventually run out of cards to play. So, solo, for me as a gamer, is how I like to play this. You know, nice thinky puzzle, simple to play, plenty of scenarios. I mean, you do get quite a lot in this box here. I mean, there's your rulebook, and the rulebook may look large, but everything is pretty large font with pictorial representation. So it's written bigger than it needs to be. And it even has a color like reference on the back for anybody who's colorblind. Although in fairness, if I showed you this board, would you have an easy time distinguishing the colours just by a few fences and trees and paddling pools and stuff? I don't know. I'd be hesitant to call this colourblind friendly, to be honest. I think you would probably struggle. But the campaign book, quite a lot in here. I mean, you have got 4 tutorial scenarios for practice, and then 8 campaign, and then 8 campaign 2, 8 campaign 3, 8 campaign 4, and then 5 for advanced rules. We haven't even got to the advanced rules yet. And then 8 advanced campaign, 8 advanced campaign 2, and it's just... There's a lot of content in here to keep you entertained, and I've no doubt that they could probably just generate more online if necessary. But I think you'll get your money's worth from here for as cheap a price point as this is. So there's not really much else to say. The variant rules that you have in here for difficulty and that unlock are fine. I mean, take or leave. Honestly, you could play this in its most basic mode and still have a good time, but honestly, if you're a gamer, you could probably throw in a few of those variants with a multiplayer game and still do fine. I just hate this stupid meowing cat thing. I mean, I can house rule it fine, but why is it even in the game to begin with? That just seems silly. But with families, I'm sure they'll like it, and that's all great. So, all in all, this is a decent produced game with a nice amount of content and a cool, thinky puzzle, because the idea with placing these cards out on this grid and overlapping the cards because you have to abide by restrictions, so it's like Honshu and Hokkaido where you accept that you can't tuck cards underneath, you have to play them on top. You know, this puzzle is really cool, and as a solo gamer, I can get some enjoyment out of this. But the multiplayer aspect is less so. I think the multiplayer is more akin to new gamers, to family gamers, families with young children, that kind of thing. And so this isn't one that I feel like I want to bring to the table, like to a club night, unless I'm teaching brand new gamers. And even then, I could probably think of some other stuff like Love Letter and that I'd rather just bring out. But personally, I think this game warrants a... It's hard to say. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh from my standpoint. I think it deserves a 7 out of 10 because I've enjoyed my time with it as a solo gamer going through this puzzle, because I think it is a cool puzzle. It's hard, you know, it's not easy to win this unless, well, even on the tutorial scenarios you can still screw yourself over, but on the harder difficulty scenarios, yeah, you're gonna have to do some creative thinking and some real good planning, and there's a good amount of tension as the fire ramps up. But I think this also has an audience for families as well, but I don't think that gamers should be going out to grab this for their particular group. You know, this is definitely for a specific audience, I may not be that audience, but I can certainly see where it would shine. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live. Don't forget to leave your comments down below. What do you think of Race to the Raft? What do you think of Isle of Cats? Does this appeal to you as a gamer or as a family gamer? Let me know your thoughts down below and we'll discuss it further. Obviously, check out more content on the channel, including the Expeditions review, which is exploding like crazy. Thank you to everybody who has watched that. And remember, as always, regardless of whether you're willing to meow like a kitten every time you play this game, it's still, at the end of the day, only a game. So take care, and bye for now.